Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the 6th edition of Adeva Insights. Today we have Tetiana Donska with us. She has years of experience in UI UX design, and she will be walking us through design systems and their power for one organization. Before we start, I just want to let you know that you can leave any questions you have in the Q&A section. We'll circle back to them after Tetiana is finished with the presentation. Tetiana, okay. The floor is yours.
Thank you for intro, Katerina. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. For the past 6 years, I've been working with the startups and enterprise companies as a UI UX designer in order to build scalable products with amazing user experiences. So the reason why I'm talking today about design systems is that I noticed that in some companies, design systems are still not widely used, or people just simply don't understand why they're worth investing. Whether for big companies like Google, GitHub, or IBM, the question is really shifted from why should we have a design system to how can we create a better design system? Really a good design system can have a huge impact on the quality of products we ship and the speed at which we develop them. So today I'd like to take a look at design systems from different perspectives, from the technical one and from business perspective as well. So what is precisely a design system? So a design system is a customized front-end framework and design language for your organization's digital products. So it helps to ensure that development work looks like it was created from a single source of truth, while it may be coming from different team members from different departments. Another quote I really like is by Andrew Caldwell, an author of a book about design systems. So design systems bring order and consistency to digital products. They help to protect the brand, elevate the user experience, and increase the speed and efficiency of how we design and build products. They are a source of truth in a system of record for our design decisions. And actually, design systems are not really new, and they represent the design evolution of the desire to use brand standards and design patterns to create products more quickly and consistently. And for large organizations, they are a natural evolution of tools that teams use to ship products. And going further back to the built environment, to architecture. So there is an architect and design theorist, Christopher Alexander, started talking about design patterns with the publication of his book, A Pattern Language. His ideas of reusable design pieces within architecture have been really an influence on the practice for several decades. And also he defines more than 200 patterns that have become so embedded into our environment that we often intuitively apply them whenever we plan, build, or compose habitats. So there is a quote in his book that can also be applied to digital design systems. So the elements of this language are entities called patterns. Each pattern describes a problem which occurs over and over again in our environment, and then describes the core of the solution, so that problem in such a way that you can use this solution 1,000,000 times over without ever doing it the same time twice. So in 70s and 80s, brand guidelines like New York City Transit Authority outlined how visual identity should be expressed. So if you found yourself in a New York subway in 60s, you would probably lost because signs didn't really help you find your way and standards didn't really exist. And in 1977, amazing designers Massimo Vinelli and his partner Bob Norda made a standards manual that changed everything. And the same situation with NASA guideline. There's a guideline, guide to how the logo, typography, and graphic sensibility should be applied across everything from confidential memos to signs to minibuses and to spaceships. And before design system became the big thing in UI UX design, designers used pattern libraries to make their work more repeatable. So pattern libraries were collections of design elements that appear repeatedly on websites. The library defines how those elements behave, what they look like, and how they are coded. So they were more about form than function, but they served a starting point for consistent design. And this early steps, they paved the way for UX designers in later years and enabled them to have a common language to discuss best practices within the industry. And in 2014, we all see material UI guidelines. So while it wasn't the first, it was one of the early design systems that made a big impact. So Google wanted to combine the best practices from both early pattern libraries and atomic design principles. So the major goal of material design was to create a unified visual language that was consistent across all their products, platforms, devices, screen sizes, and because Google products have such a massive reach and scale, having commonly used elements were key to maintain cohesive look and feel. So, so these guidelines and principles were what made it the big step in the design system history. So what actually the design system consists of, and who should work on it, who should be involved? So before beginning to work on the design system, the team should identify who should be involved. So actually there's not just only designers. So here is a quick list of ideal team of who should be implementing the design system. So first of all, designers, of course, to define visual elements of the design system. Then front-end developers to create modular code. Then accessibility experts who can ensure that the system conforms to standards. Then also content strategists who can help the team to nail the tone of voice of the system, to work on UX copy. Then researchers who can help you understand customer needs. And then product managers to ensure that the system is aligned with the customer needs. And leaders, vice presidents or directors who can align the vision throughout the company, including executive leadership. So yeah, so these people should be able to drive the decisions forward within their role. And going further to structure, so usually it consists of these four main elements. First one is visual attributes. like foundations such as spacing, color, typography. Then components. These are interface and UI elements that make up a digital product. And patterns. So they refer to a set of design patterns for the user interface that are specific to this organization. And these patterns might be, for example, common used UX modules such as payment form information. And then principles. So this is a set of principles in a written form that were baked by rationale and thought. So visual attributes, if you break apart each component of a design system, we can find that these fundamental elements make up its visual language. So it's typography, color, spacing, images, which also might include icons and illustrations. And depending on your needs, you might also want to include visual form, for example, elevation, shadows, or depth. Then motion to show micro interactions, for example, or even sound. So you can consider the role of these design elements placed in a simple component like a button. So a button typically has a background color, typography for the label, and spacing inside it. There might be an icon next to the label or a border, and finally hovering over or clicking on the button could trigger animation as a feedback to the user. So button might seem a very simple element, but there are many design decisions required to bring it to life. So the colors you choose are really important, and it's more than just an extension to a brand, because UI used colors to convey feedback, for example, error or success states, or information for charts and graphs, or hierarchy to show structured order through color and typography. And common colors in a design system include 1 up to 3 primary to represent your brand, and this can be used, for example, for call to action buttons. There will also likely be neutral colors for backgrounds and borders. And finally, you will have colors for states such as error, warning, and success. And also, it's really important to check accessibility of these colors and how they work together. So typography. For typography, the fonts you choose also have really high impact on both your brand and your user experience. So we should always keep legibility in mind as you select the right fonts for a system. So keeping to common system fonts like Helvetica or Times New Roman, as they're familiar to the user's eye, and some companies prefer to use custom web fonts, but to reflect their brand. But you should always pay attention to performance, because it might be affected by using custom fonts. So typography usually also include such attributes like scale, weight, tracking, and color. And most design systems usually include one typeface for both heading and body copy, and one for code. So again, it's better to keep numbers as low as possible to prevent performance issues. Next one is spacing. So the system you use for spacing and sizing looks best when it has rhyme and balance. This means using numbers based on patterns and proportions. So using a consistent spacing scale also promotes maintainability through ratios by making layouts more predictable and more likely to fit and align well. So there is a 4-based scale, which is growing in popularity because this is a recommended scale for many reasons. Both iOS and Android use and recommend metrics which multiplies by 4. And also standard icon size usually tend to be 4-based, like 16, 24, or 32 pixels. So they are scaled more easily. So when everything is using this system, things are more likely to fit, and it's also good for responsive. Then next thing is icons. So before starting working on icon sets, it's usually great to identify some rules. So what is the line weight? Are these icons going to be filled or outlined or both? Size and color is also important, and but you may have different styles for different icon types. For example, for action icons, you might have outlined icons with one color, and for navigation icons may be multicolored and more creative. Also for illustrations, illustrations actually are great to add some character to a product. So it's always great to, before start, identify what are the colors, what are the most common elements, where you are going to use this. So for example, illustrations can be used for empty states in your product. So the next important thing are components. So in general, most companies follow atomic design principles. And this is a great conceptual model developed by Brad Frost. So it's based on modularity principles, and it has been inspired by chemistry of atoms, molecules, and organisms. So atoms are small standalone components like buttons and icons. Molecules are actually an assembly of small components, like an input field with the button, for example. And organisms, this combination of molecules such as models, model windows or forms, and layouts. This is how the pieces are laid out on the page. So next thing is patterns and principles. So patterns actually are reusable combinations of components that solve common user problems. These best practice solutions help users achieve their goals and help ensure consistency across experiences. So for example, a form pattern could contain a detailed description of each component, and for example, like labels or length of input fields or accessibility. For example, case when autofocus should be on the first field by default, or layout, or button positioning, and also behavior and like validation of input fields, on error messages. And all these guidelines answer both questions, how and also why. So all in all, by creating a common visual language codified through visual attributes and a set of components, this helps actually to improve communication between designers, developers, and overall within organization. So another thing I want to talk about is actually business benefits. So as someone interested in working on a design system, designers probably don't need to be convinced about design system benefits. However, getting others on board requires having right arguments. So what are these arguments, and what benefits will bring a design system to business? I really like metaphor with the IKEA table and tailor-made table. So on one hand, we have IKEA table, and you have all these instructions and pre-made components, so you can build your own table within hours. On the other hand, a tailor-made table requires professional and days or weeks to build. So the same is with the design system. When you have all components and pattern library in place, you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time, and it helps to drastically increase efficiency. So efficiency and productivity, this actually lead to reducing cost because it saves time by reusing components and modules. It saves both developers and designers time. It saves also time by having a shared design rationale, because it cuts a lot of discussions and arguments between designers. And also it saves time by having one source of truth, because designers don't need to spend time searching for a component which they know it exists in some old design files. And also it supports easier onboarding and transfer of knowledge to new designers or developers. And also it saves time on quality assurance, because all the components should be tested before they go to UI library. Some companies actually already might have style guides and might think that that's enough to cover all their needs, but the problem might occur when time goes by and the product is growing, and style guides are not really, they don't really sufficient anymore, and they just include visual attributes. So that's where you need a design system to support scalability of a product. So also faster time to market. It helps to seize new opportunities for a business. So it allows to actually iterate faster and also test different solutions faster. It helps to stay competitive and beat the competition, and also it helps to speeds up initial MVP releases and increases delivery frequency. And also there is actually time for innovation, because on the left side, we have a graph where we don't have a design system, and there is more time needed for development and UI design. versus when the company has a design system. There is less time on development and therefore more time to work on high impact tasks and on actually to innovate. So and if you have more time for innovation, this definitely leads to user satisfaction. So because it removes the need to do things that don't bring value, like repetitive tasks. It supports creativity, so you have more time to design experiences rather than pushing pixels, and more time for user research. So, and yeah, and also the important thing is it leads to cleaner design and code, and also it increases quality and performance, and there's less bugs. So because components usually are reviewed and tested, and only best components make their way to a design system, and this definitely reduces number of bugs. So overall, the design system is a long-term investment, and that's why it's really crucial to have the right arguments when you have a mission to convince your team, because it's a really ongoing process, and you should have their support. And also, I wanted to show a few examples of great design systems. So there is Atlassian. I'm sure you know everyone about this. So from its landing page, the system addressed to every group in digital ecosystem. So they have sections for brand, marketing, and for the product itself. So, for example, the section about brand is really amazing. It highlights the benefits that the system brings to its product, and also it reflects who this company are and what they want their users to feel when they use their products. And also, I think it helps Atlassian team to stay on the same page about their values. Next is great because they have really well documented patterns, and they keep them updated. And also the grid. So they use this 4-based grid system to produce coherent designs, and yeah, so the grid system is also very well documented. And similar to Atlassian, IBM has also a new overview page covering all aspects of their design system. So what I really like about this one is, among many sections, they have sections dedicated to animation. So it's really important because animation is a powerful communication tool, and IBM, they describe classic principles along with amazing tips and techniques powered by real examples. And also they have amazing section dedicated to data visualization. So it's like a handbook for data visualization, because they have principles, processes, chart models. So basically they've synthesized a set of criteria that can help to achieve successful data visualization. And yeah, so here's a few resources that are really interesting. So first one I already mentioned, it's a book called A Pattern Language. So it's really interesting to be inspired and and follow the roots of design systems in architecture. Next is Atomic Design by Brett Frost. So it provides really clear methodology for crafting design systems, and also a book about design systems. So it covers actually what design systems are, why they're important, and how to convince stakeholders to create one. And also it introduces two different approaches to creating a design system, and its focus also on importance of brand and creating documentation. So yeah, so that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tetiana. We have a couple of questions already. We'll go through this. If anyone else has something else to ask, just share them in the Q&A section and we'll get to it shortly. So the first one is, what is your opinion on component-based design and design reusability?
So I think that component-based design is a really great approach, as I was talking about, because when you have components and you can reuse them actually in different products, and you can share it within different departments. So for example, you have a marketing team, right? And sometimes they don't really need a designer when they have a set of components and they can test their ideas. So I think that reusable components are really great, and they definitely help to speed up the process and to be more efficient.
That's great. Oh, a lot of questions coming up. That's good. What is the ideal size of the design team when you should start thinking about implementing design system?
Okay, so I mean, ideal size of the design team. I think that's an interesting question. I think that, I mean, even one person can start working on a design system, but at least you need a designer and a developer to keep it and maintain it. But the more designers, the better. But sometimes it might be difficult to be on the same page if there are a lot of designers. So maybe I would say 3 designers might be okay. And so when you start thinking about implementing design system, I think, so once the as early as possible, and once the style guide, for example, if you have style guide and that's not really enough to support your product, you should definitely start thinking about design system.
And I'm guessing also when there is more turnaround in the team, or there are not that many team members that stay with the company all the while. So that's when it would be probably most helpful, because everyone can get up to speed right away.
Yeah, yeah.
A bit of a follow-up on the same one. So what happens when you have massive multidisciplinary design teams? Do we hire design specialists that do only design systems, or is it a combination?
Well, I think, yeah, sometimes I know that, for example, in big companies, for example, like LinkedIn, they actually have design system specialists, a team dedicated to a design system. So I think if you work in a large company, there should be a separate team for design system.
Right. Okay, I need to go through those and pick up some that are more interesting. Okay, so this is, we have one from Ira Baranova. But it's pretty much similar. So what's the best time to start working on a design system? Whether is it when there is major amount of screens approved, or is it at the beginning of the project? So what would be the best scenario?
Yeah, so the problem is when you start thinking, for example, about design system in the middle of the project, you not just need to work on the design system, you need to conduct a visual audit, and you need to analyze what you currently have, and therefore you would spend more time on this. So the sooner this is better to start working on it, definitely.
And is it possible to do it as a web development startup company?
Web development.
I'm guessing a lot of different projects. So maybe when you get projects from different clients that have different requirements, so how do you work with reusability and handle, the uniqueness of every request you get?
Okay, so I mean, I think that there should be a specific design system for each project which you should maintain. I mean, otherwise there will be a huge mess, I think. So.
Okay.
And just wanted to add that there also exist a lot of different frameworks which you can use if you're just a developer and you don't have designers. It's also possible to use, for example, different frameworks like Undesign, or you can use also Material UI and customize it.
Mm-hmm. And when do you know that the design guide is not enough anymore?
The design guideline, for example, brand guideline, right? It usually includes only simple things like colors, typography, or illustrations, and maybe some styles for buttons. So it might be efficient enough to use it on a website, but if you actually have a product or if you have a few products and you start working on it, it's the right time to start.
Okay. In general, from your experience, how much time do you think should be dedicated to researching and developing a design system, and how much doing the actual work?
I think that for research, if we are talking about, for example, if we are talking about existing product, and obviously it depends on size of the product, but in general, I would say for the visual audit, you need some time, and it might take, if it's a small team, it might take for starting from weeks up to months probably, to put together everything that you have, and actually building the design system is an ongoing process, and you will be building it all the time while your product exists, because it's never stays on the same place, and it's always like transforms and evolves. So.
Okay. What about using popular design systems like Material Design or Bootstrap when you end up with generic looking products? How to avoid that? How to be efficient but still not be generic?
Yeah, I ask myself this question all the time. Yeah, so I mean, there are like you as a company and also decision makers should understand what are their goals, because if you start using Material UI, right, you would have like a great working design system, but it will look generic, right? And when you will And if you will create your own design system, you will start from scratch, and you might spend more time, but then your brand will be unique. So I mean, and your products will be unique, but you will spend more time, definitely. So I think that if you have the ability to and time to work on custom design system, that's great. If not, in Material UI, there are lots of ways to customize things and to change colors, typography, so it might not even look like Material UI anymore. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess all of the websites out there use something these days, because no one wants to reinvent the wheel and do everything from scratch. So you can still be creative and use the base of what you have at your disposal. Okay, one final question. We are not able to go through all of them. We talked about how to convince the business owners to start with design systems, but there are a few more questions about, your personal experience and how would you approach it. So maybe you can give some more practical example of making them understand the value of design system, or when they should start doing that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there was, in my practice, was just one situation where I really needed to convince someone. So basically, there were a lot of different problems because designs were not, of the product were not really consistent. And there were a lot of complaints from users because something is not working, something is looking different, and they don't really understand what's going on. And for developers, it was taking like a lot of time to do something, because it was so different. I mean, on this product there are different like styles for one button, or like 25 styles for typography. So I tried to talk about actually benefits of time saving and of reducing costs for design and development, because when you do this investment, it will really save time in the future. So I talked to founder of this startup, and I made almost like very similar presentation about benefits. So I mean, it really helped, and it helped afterwards, once we started like standardizing all the elements. It really helped in the future. So, and developers were happy. So I mean, it's really like talking about these arguments, and when you really like talk about saving costs, that what works really.
Yeah, that's the first argument you need to open with. Okay, that's great. There are a bit more questions lining up, but I'm sure people can also reach you directly if they have some additional questions they want to ask. We wouldn't like to, take too much of the time. I appreciated everyone that joined us today. Thank you again, Tetiana, for the nice presentation. This will be again available on our YouTube channel in the next few days. So if you want to rewatch it or focus on some specific area, that would be also available.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Katerina.
Yeah, there are already comments that the talk was great and they learned a lot.
Thank you.
See you next month, everyone. Have a great rest of your day or evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.